there isn't a better feeling in the world. It's not possible to have a better feeling in the world than winning that race. Like, I wouldn't trade it for nothing. I wouldn't trade it for winning a MotoGP race.
I met a gypsy.
So a guy like Michael Dunlop, he's now won the most of anybody there. What's he got that other people don't have?
A lot of years, for a start. He's nearly done. He hasn't done the same amount of years. Like John McGuinness is on his 30th year, and he's won a lot, 23. But Michael has nearly as many starts. He's 98 starts at the TT's done. He's been doing it. He was TT to the bone before he was born. You know, his dad raced a TT, his uncle raced a TT, his brother raced a TT. His family is the TT. The Dunlop family is like Joey Dunlop is basically like God in, you know, Northern Ireland. Is like such a literally an icon in that country.
Yeah.
And in the sport really as well, but specifically in that country, his uncle was. So like when he's been doing it since day one, he's figured out like that he does not need to be good at anything else. You know, any other kind of bike racing, it's about the TT. You know, it doesn't bother trying at British Superbikes, doesn't try to race on tracks, uses it as a bit of training, and then turns up at the road races. And that's what's important. You know, TT is what he goes for. Also, sort of figured out, not that he isn't good on big bikes, but he's definitely really good on the smaller bikes. So sort of like figured out his strengths as weaknesses. So he's like gone all in with the super sport class at the sport bike class, which are the two lower classes. A 600cc class, 650cc twin are the two classes. Where 1000cc races, he's not won very many at all. But he's like, I don't know, super sport races, the 600 class, I think is it 11 in a row now or something? Like, it's insane. Every race since 2019, he's super sport race he's won, which is obscene. But he actually, like, he's got that figured. Like, it's super important, obviously in the lower powered bike classes, to have a really good bike, like a really good bike.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the best bike in that class, like, it's not happening. Like, you has to be like a mega bike because it makes such a big difference. Whereas in the 1000cc class, the standard Superstock 1000 bike in the superbike class doesn't really make that much of a difference because the stock, like, you could buy a BMW M1000, like what I race, you could buy a standard one from the shop that's 215 horsepower. That's rude. That's more than anyone needs. Like, superbikes a few years ago didn't have that power.
Yeah.
So they're all like huge power now. So like, you can't use all that power really anywhere. So then it comes down to necessarily who can ride it the best or who can set the bike up the best as well. So like, it's more important than the lower class. You need that power. Like in a bike that's only got super sport bikes, 140 to 150 horsepower. You got 140 horsepower bike against someone with 150. Like, you ain't winning the race. Like, there's maybe 4 top guys or whatever. If someone's got 140 and someone's got 150, like, that's the result already. Like, you can't really compete with that because it makes so much more difference in that class. And he's just really got that figured out. Whereas a lot of people would be more intent on figuring out the big bikes and the seniors. Like John McGuinness, you look at his wins, all big bike. I think he's won small bike race. I don't know if he's ever won a 600 race. Maybe one. You know, the rest
just for shits and giggles.
Superbike races, not stock 1,000 races, Superbike race, Superbike senior. For there was like a 5-year period where he won like every single one. So like John sort of mentored me when he still does now, really. We're just good friends now. But when I had like come into the TT, like we got on really well, and he helped me loads. And that was something that he always told me. It was like, big bike races where it's at. It was like, TT wins in any class mean a lot, but big bike races are going to change your life. That's the difference. Like, go for the Superbike wins, not the other ones. So it's like, it depends what you're going for. If you're going for the most wins, sure, like you try in all the classes. But them Superbike wins are the ones you really want. We got into this discussion last week with a couple of guys, and if you could have five wins in sport bike and super sport, like 2 of one and 3 of the other, or like 1 senior win, which would you rather have? Or 2 senior wins? Like what? Because for me, I'd rather have 2 seniors. Senior is the one, the trophy that you want. It's the biggest one. It's the biggest prize money. It's the biggest kudos. It's the one everybody remembers. They remember Michael, don't get me wrong, because he won that many races. But if someone takes something away from the end of the TT, it's who won the senior. It's the last one. It's the big one. It's the hardest bikes to ride. It's the everything. And that's what he always said to me. It was like, win the big one.
And so talk me through your first win and your wins that mean the most there.
I actually had this the other day, and someone said which one means the most or which was the most special, and I actually find it hard to pick between my 3, because I had 24. I got my first win in super stock, so still 1,000cc, but the stock one, and it was special to me because it was the one I had to work the hardest for. And there's the most pressure on, because everybody is like hyping you up for like a couple of years then, since 22 when I got my first podium. And then 23 was a horrendous year. I had like illness and some bike problems and stuff. So I just had like a real shit year in 23. So then a lot of people are like, oh, he's like been hyped up and he's not actually going to like, he's sort of fallen at the last hurdle, not going to step it up to that, you know, the top level. And going into 24, there was all this like promotional material about the big 3. No, like the big 3 is Dean Harrison, Michael Dunlop, Peter Hickman. And like the big 3 is where it's at. Every race, it's only going to be between the big 3. And I'm like, I use that like inside as like fire, where I was like, I'll show you. Like, let me be a part of that. Like, and I didn't expect them to say me, but I just used it as like to fire me up. So I'm like, I'm going to be in that. Like, I'm going to show them where it's at. They're not even saying that I'm within a chance of beating any of these 3. I'm going to show them. And the super stock race, I knew the big bikes like is where it's at. It's where I've put my work into these big bike races. And I had a good package with the team that I was riding for with BMWs. And coming at the super stock race, love the I actually ride a super stock bike in the super bike class as well, because it just works well. And yeah, super stock race, I'm like, this is it. Like, we're good. Got off to a good start, which I'm good at, like good right from the start, which some guys take a bit of time. And anyway, went out there, like had a great battle with Peter Hickman, who's now my teammate. And he's known as the like, not the king of the mountain, but he's like the last section of the TT course is over the mountain. And nobody is faster than Pete over the mountain. He has the sector records there. He's the fastest guy over the mountain. So if many times Dunlop and Harrison were like neck and neck with Pete on the last lap, and they get to the mountain and Pete would just blow them away over the mountain and win the race. And anyway, we're on the last lap. I'm neck and neck with Pete. I had a pit board at Ginger Hall that said +0. So I was like, there was literally less than a second.
Heavy.
Less than a second between.
Are you in front of him on track or behind?
I am in front of him, so I can't see him. So he's like, he's number 10. So I go off 8. So he's like 20 seconds behind me. So we can't see each other. And yeah, I'm like, I know I'm +0. And I'm coming up to the mountain. I know it's with Pete because when I stopped for my pit stop, they told me it's you and Pete that are neck and neck. So I'm coming up to the mountain. There was something inside me that I was like, everybody thinks he's the fastest over the mountain. I'm going to change that. And I love the mountain section as well. It's like probably my strongest sector as well, or 2 sectors it is over the mountain, up the mountain and down it. And and like pulled 3 seconds on him over the mountain and won by 2.5, 3 seconds or whatever. And was just got that first win. I didn't know I'd won because nobody tells you because everybody doesn't cross the line together. You don't know you've crossed the finish line first. And you pull into the return road and I'm sort of like looking at, there's a big like grandstand there and all the crowd are cheering and going wild. And I'm like trying to look out to see if someone said you like P1 or not. And I don't know if I just couldn't make it out or what, but I couldn't see anyone saying that. 20 seconds later, Pete pulls in beside me and he's like, well done, mate. I don't know who's won it, but it was a good race. And shook hands and everything. And it's not, you come all the way up the return lane and then you turn into the winner's enclosure.
Yeah.
So we're coming up the return lane and the whole time I'm like trying to tell myself, like almost prepare myself because I'm like, just tell myself that I haven't won it. Because I'm like, I don't want the disappointment of like pulling around the corner and seeing that I didn't win. And anyway, get to the winner's enclosure and pulled just as I turned the corner and all my team are stood around the number 1 board going absolutely mental. And it's just, I remember every single like second of the whole thing. Like I can feel it, you know? It's just like it's a cool thing, that first one. There isn't a better feeling in the world than winning. It's not possible to have a better feeling in the world than winning that race. Like I wouldn't trade it for nothing. I wouldn't trade it for winning a MotoGP race.
Yeah. You just finished watching a clip from the full 3-hour podcast. You're on our Clips channel. The full podcast live on the Gypsy Tales podcast channel. It's linked right here. Go over to that channel. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and make sure you never miss a full episode of the Gypsy Tales podcast. If you don't want to watch it on YouTube, you want to watch it on the go, you can also head to our iTunes or Spotify to get the full 3-hour podcast in audio format.
I met a gypsy.